Okay, so one topic that I noticed is kind of getting popular now is topics about the how the gaming industry is starting to decline rapidly due to the boringness of what's been releasing lately. And I know that my goal for this video is to try to be as honest as possible and I guess give a different kind of perspective, considering that a lot of these YouTubers are either like 20 or maybe yeah, probably about like early 20s. I'm only 18 and I kind of have the same opinion really. If you notice that my character is walking weirdly, it's because my thumbstick's broken. So I want to start off and say that I've been playing video games for a long time, like probably since I was 4, and being or considering that I was 4, I grew up with some really, I guess you could say, iconic games for the time that have yet to really, no new game has been able to capture the essence of those games. The main three that I'm gonna stick with is Flat Out 2, Rainbow Six Vegas, and SWAT 4. All three games have one thing in common, and that's that the companies, aside from if you unless you count the sequel to Vegas 2, have not been able to recreate games that meet the fun factor of those titles when they came out. Not to mention, I think I forget what company made SWAT 4, but they didn't make any SWAT games after SWAT 4. The main reason why I use these games as an example is because this is still the era of, aside if you count Rainbow Six Vegas, I guess that Rainbow Six Vegas is the really the only game that you can play on PlayStation 3. SWAT 4 was a PC exclusive, I believe, and Flat Out 2 was PC, maybe the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. I have it both on my computer and on my PlayStation 2. The reason why I I have both copies is because that's the probably the only game out of my catalog that I own for two different things. And there's a reason for that. It is probably like my third or fourth favorite video game of all time, not just for the sake of nostalgia and just because it was like part of my childhood. It was because it had heart and soul put into it. Just like Saints Row 2, just like the old Call of Duty games. This was back when companies cared about their product and or well, yeah, I mean, yeah, this is back when developers cared about making a product that gamers can enjoy and honestly keep them coming back to. You know, achievements and online multiplayer and stuff like that has become very scarce in modern gaming nowadays. And it's honestly ridiculous, but it's also sad. The last game that came out within like a couple years that I thoroughly enjoyed had to been, well, and that I would keep coming back to also, if I may add, has to be Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5 is like probably my fifth favorite game of all time because it was the multiplayer and also the story was all right, but the single player like map and all that was all right, but the multiplayer is what keeps me going back to that game. There is a very small community dedicated to hosting lobbies and playing on maps that people created because that's the heart and soul of that game specifically. I understand why people like put it below, like Far Cry 3 or whatever, like in terms of games. But like what they never mention is they never really mention the arcade mode. Arcade, while it was a limited, while it offers limited amount of gameplay, like multiplayer only has two game modes and arcade has like a couple basic ones. The maps are what people are interested in coming back to. They want to see the type of maps that people can create, whether it be, recreating a Call of Duty map or making a very special map that's inspired by other things, but it's originally a original idea. That's what people go back to that game for. And honestly, that was the last experience. If like after that was 2018 or 2019. I mean, there were other games that came out afterwards that I don't count the Mafia remake because that is in fact a remake. But a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, as much as I love the story and it's easily one of my favorite games of all time, it's for the story. The online is ass and it's boring and Rockstar doesn't care. Which leads to my next section. Around after this time, like we're talking about elementary school, uh, another game that kind of influenced my youth was Mod Nation Racers, and everybody knows the sad truth of the future of that series. It's not gonna happen because the company behind that game and the company behind Sleeping Dogs went under, closed their doors. There will never be another Mod Nation Racers game, which is a shame because back when Sony had the idea of making PlayStation games dedicated to user created content, that is easily one of the best games of all time that offers that. Track design, cart design, character creation, all of that stuff is offered to the player to create stuff with. And then you can download and share your creations and play other people's creations. The writing was all right for the career, and the overall game is, in fact, a quote unquote Mario knockoff, but it's the best damn Mario knockoff there is. Mario Kart will always be second place to Mod Nation Racers in my book, and people may disagree with that, but the honest truth is that game had a lot of replayability and a lot of reason to play it when it came out between geez, I think it was like 2010, and I remember the day it came out. I was at a mall, and the uh, the time it closed, which was like close to 2020-ish. I played it in the last year that the online servers shut down, and everybody, even the community of that game, they were not toxic at all. They were there to race and play other people's creations and share their stuff. It was a fun community for the time being. And yet, the only game that I can think comes close to that would be Far Cry. A lot of people may know that I'm a huge racing game fan because that's basically what inspired me to really get into video games, racing games. And I guess you could argue NHL Hits 2003. But a game that sells me on everything is music, licensed music to go with it, which will never have good licensed music almost ever again, unless companies decide to continue make games with actually a good licensed soundtrack to it. The last one being probably I wouldn't even say Watch Dogs 2. I'd probably say GTA 5. Watch Dogs 2 has some good songs. Not to mention, it was the first time I heard Sorority Noise. But and I think the first game had Alkaline Trio's Private Eye. But again, one or two songs does not make up for the rest of the mediocre radio stations. However, um, some other games that I enjoyed without the licensed soundtrack were Blur, Split Second, and MotorStorm. These once again, well, Blur went under, Split Second went under, and MotorStorm. I don't even know if there's ever going to be another Storm game, to be honest. Um, the overall the overall tone of this video is not supposed to be depressing. It's supposed to be waking people up and realizing that if big game developers aren't going to make the games that people want, you guys should move over to the indie side. There are a lot of indie developers, and I'm not one of them. I'm just saying that I've noticed so many good games to come out of the indie scene since the gaming industry has been declining in terms of quality of big AAA titles. I the last indie game that I played was Chicken Please Paint It Red. Or that was a really good game. And I'm not even a fan of noirs, but the overall comedy slash seriousness of the game sold me on an idea that I never thought would exist, and a game that would never fly under AAA title in terms of creating something as fun as that game. Indie companies have, at least recently, have decided that, if AAA companies aren't going to make the games that are sequels to games that they want, they're going to make their own versions of those games and hopefully have improvements of the flaws that, those games originally had. I'm not really good with remembering names, but the one game that I really wanted to play, I think it was called Maximum Action. It's on Steam, and it's like a first person thing that's kind of like a first person shooter that's kind of like Fear, Max Payne, but they also have references to other movies like Little or Big Big Trouble in Little China and like stuff like that. The last thing I guess I'll end off on is the Saints Row GTA thing. GTA became a dead corpse in online probably about after the Doomsday Heist. That's when they started milking the game and adding stuff like Saints Row and sci-fi movies into the game and charged players money to buy shark cards to pay for those things because they're so crazy and they know that players will don't want to grind, so they'll spend shark cards to get those things. There have been recent fixes to allow you to sell in private sessions, which is a good step in the direction, but they will still not fix any problems, whether it be internet problem or well, like getting DDoSed on PC, or more importantly, connection problems and joining certain players. We're having this issue on PlayStation where I want to join my friend, but or no, my friend wants to join me, but he can't because he can't accept invites. And then my other friend can invite him, or well, he can invite everybody else to his session, but he can't invite that friend, and that friend can't invite that my friend. So like I don't know what's going on there. They better fix that. Today's Thursday. Hopefully they fix that. And the other thing I guess to mention is there's some problems with one of the auto shop contracts, the Union Depository one. Some of the personal vehicles despawn whenever you escape the bank, which is a huge issue. I don't want to be taking a Prius to go all the way to the buyer. Um, but a lot of that GTA stuff has already been talked about. I wanted to mention the stuff that hasn't been talked about yet. Now I guess we'll mention Saints Row. Saints Row 2 will always be my favorite video game of all time. Saints Row 3 and Saints Row 4 will never come close to that. Agents of Mayhem does not exist in my mind. And the Saints Row reboot, I had hope for it. And honestly, if you're one of those people that were like saying that it was going to fail, you were right. You were right. The problem I have is the people that when it did fail and they're like, "Oh, see, I told you." You know, how do you think they would have been acting if the reboot didn't fail? They'd probably be pissed that it didn't fail. But I'm glad I'm more pissed off at the people that were harassing other people about that rather than the game failing. I mean, it's a shame the game was gonna fail. Honestly, by the more I looked at it and the fact that they didn't add anything that the fans wanted is disgusting. And the main reason why I'm not playing it right now is the main reason why I'm playing Watch Dogs 2, because Watch Dogs 2 is the superior version of Watch Dogs 1, and it might honestly be the superior version of Saints Row, discounting the customization features. Everything about this game is more fun than Saints Row. The map, the overall the multiplayer, the fact that this game actually has multiplayer and Saints Row only has co-op, and even recently the discussion is within my friend group I will not call it Saints Row. I will call it the reboot because it discriminates the Saints Row name. This was an unscripted video, kind of a tangent, and kind of giving my 2 cents on the whole gaming industry thing. Basically, support your indie developers and pay attention to the Steam side of things, because a lot of games that you might have grew up with either on PlayStation 2 or on PC, old classic 2000s games, indie developers are looking to recreate that magic with their own set of things. Support them. Give them money, share everything. Like even if you want to review or see about getting review copies, one of my favorite YouTubers is GG Man Lives, which he or G Man Lives now, I think. He kind of does that sort of thing, and so does Gaming Pastime. Um, Aside from that, oh yeah, and also like speaking of Flat Out 2, there is someone is trying to recreate the magic of Flat Out 2. They have a game called Trail Out, which is basically a huge homage to Flat Out 2 and other games, Wreckfest even. And Wreckfest, I don't count if Wreckfest as close to a Flat Out 2 game because you can't fling your driver out of the windshield. There's no good music to the soundtrack. However, the game is solid. And I think, going forward, music is going to become a huge part of the everything, shows, and I feel like people or game developers and everybody should be bringing that back to the gaming scene. Especially indie artists. Like there's still record labels. Like Pure Noise, Epitaph. I'm sure Epitaph is gonna be more expensive to do stuff. Fueled by Ramen, Top Shelf Records, Run for Cover Records. Oh my God, Run for Cover Records. If I hear some songs from that record company, like that's like easily one of my favorite record companies. Um, but yeah, there's obviously um, fixes that they can get music from these record companies to promote in video games. People have been resulting to Spotify. Yes, that's the only reason why that's the only reason why the soundtracks have become more poor, because the gamers have been going to Spotify to find music that they already listen to. They're not gonna find music and a mediocre licensed soundtrack for a game. Like I said, uh, while one argument that I have with people is yes, GTA 5 may have a really good soundtrack, and so will Vice City, but Saints Row 2 will always be my favorite open world game soundtrack. And then my favorite racing game soundtrack is Burnout 3, obviously. Flat Out 2 is a close second. All right, I think I mentioned everything. This is like I said, unscripted. There's not really a whole lot of layouts. There's no real, depth to this video. It's like, here's everything I wanted to say. Take it all in. Goodbye, and share this if you find it was helpful.